everyone, cleaning up. It's Alicia McGill with Math Labs. Yeah, I don't really like editing, so if I make a mistake, I just keep it rolling. So today we are looking at Content Standard 6.RP.3a, and this is Lab 1.8. Basically, that standard is dealing with ratios. It's in the second book of grade 6 Math Labs, Ratio and Proportional Relationships. And it's specifically dealing with the use of visual models. Now in labs 1.1 through 1.7, we looked at ratio tables for part to part. We really explored those in depth, and also part to whole. We graphed those types of relationships. We solved tasks involving the use of ratio tables. And now we're going to extend our work to include tape diagrams and master that model. So at the end of the day, we have all of these tools in our tool belt, and we can decide which ones will help us solve problems at the end of the day. I love tape diagrams for solving ratio comparison problems that are part to whole. Basically, if you know a ratio and then you know the total, right? And we looked at how to make a 3-column table to do that in the prior math lab, but it's just as simple to use a tape diagram. And they're kind of fun. So we'll get right in. I'm going to read the objective, and you follow along and read it in your head. This is Lab 1.8. Okay. I can use a visual model, namely a tape diagram, to solve problems involving ratios, rates, and proportions. Okay. So let's look at a similar problem that we had. Just throw that on the ground. I'm in the garage here. Newsflash, not in the classroom. Hear the crickets? Okay, I do these videos at night. I do this at night when I'm at home, because I teach during the day, and you know, there's only 24 hours in a day, and so it's late, but this is important. So here we have a problem that we solved before, and that was the ratio of cups of flour to cups of sugar is 1 to 3, and cups of flour to sugar, and I'm just going to abbreviate important information. If there's 15 cups of sugar, how many cups of flour are there? Okay, so how many cups of flour? You get the point, right? Okay. So we have a ratio of 1 to 3. So this is how you make a tape diagram. And there's different variations. Some people draw a vertical line. I just stick with the tape diagram. Okay, so we have a ratio of 1, which is flour. So I'm going to label that flour. And it's 1 to 3 for sugar. So sugar, I'm going to label this bar. And for every 1, as you know, the meaning, which you should remember from the labs, this meaning is for every 1 cup of flour, there are 3 cups of sugar, okay? So that means for this 1, I'm going to draw 3. 1, 2, 3. And it just kind of looks like, you know, a piece of tape, looks like the bar. So that's basically the setup, okay? For every 1 cup of flour, there are 3 cups of sugar. Students should have worked with this type of an arrangement of numbers in 4th grade with number comparisons. Such and such has 3 times the amount. If altogether they have, you know, X amount, then how much does this person or that person have? And so they've seen it in the context of multiplicity, multiplying. So this is for ratios, very similar. Okay, so what the question is asking here is, and what it says, now that we have our tape diagram set up 1 to 3, it says if there's 15 cups of sugar. So we know that this down here, this part here, which is your sugar, it says there's 15 cups. So we know that that amount is 15. Well, we can see that there are 3 bars that represent 15. So a number sentence we could think about is 3 times what number equals 15. And if you understand division, which you should now in 6th grade, especially with these models, then you recognize that 15 divided by 3 gives you that 5. Or in this case, 3 times 5. So we could put in what n is, which would be 5. So 3 times 5 equals 15. So therefore, n is 5. Now, looking at saying 3 times what equals 15, and it's 3 times 5. What that basically means is that there's 5 in each of these parts, because 3 ends equal 15, so each end equals 5. So we're just going to, sometimes it's nice to just label them with the quantity. So the question is, how many cups of flour do we have? Well, these are the same size piece, right? Because this is 1 to 3. So each unit needs to be the same. So that means that this unit would be 5. Okay. And so to answer the question, how many cups of flour, you would say there are, you can see that here. In this case, there are 5 cups. 5 cups of flour. Period. That's it. That's a tape diagram. Now, just to analyze a few things, what do you notice, ladies and gentlemen, about the total in this particular ratio of 1 to 3 if there are 15 cups of sugar? How many cups altogether represent this problem? Well, if you count, you would see that that answer is 20. 5, 10, 15, 20. So we're going to extend this knowledge, and you're going to discover different problems that you can solve involving a tape diagram where I give you the total. Okay? So I give you what both of the parts are. Okay? It could be the ratio of boys to girls. In fact, you know what? Let's do one. I think that you have to get used to making the models, and you have to learn how to make the models before you can make the models on your own, right? You agree? So I'm going to start it, and then you're going to try it on your whiteboard, okay? All right. Let's solve one that we saw in a prior lab. I think we did one where we had the ratio of thrillers to comedies was 2 to 3. Okay, let's do that one. So we had, this is a movie collection. So we have thriller movies, which, ooh, scary. Halloween's coming up next week, next Friday. So thrillers to comedies, and that ratio is 2 to 3. Okay, so looking at this particular ratio, we're going to make a tape diagram. But here's the part that you need to pay attention to. If the total collection contains 35 movies, how many are thrillers? Question mark. And comedies? Question mark. Okay, so what I want you to do is create a tape diagram, starting with the ratio and labeling what your tape diagram is comparing. You know, it could be boys to girls, miles to hour. In this case, thrillers to comedies. And we're going to look at the total collection of what that contains, and then look at each part, okay? And then decide how many are thrillers and how many are comedies. Okay, so do that now. So pause the video. Okay, I'm back. So, if you made a tape diagram correctly, it should look something like this. The ratio of thrillers to comedies is 2 to 3. So you're going to start with 2. And that's going to be for thrillers. This is thriller. I'm just going to put a TH for thriller. Again, Halloween's coming up. To 3. I did not do that intentionally. Now, these could touch. There's no rule book that says your tape diagrams can't touch each other. It's okay. Some people like separate them, but they certainly could touch each other. I just want you to know that. It's okay. These models are here to help you reason with the mathematics, not to follow some perfect rule about how to make the diagram, okay? So look at, that's not perfect. So 2 to 3. Nobody's perfect. Okay. Miley said something that was worthy here to repeat. Comedies. I'm just going to put a C-O-M for comedies. Okay, so we have thrillers to comedies, and we see that that ratio is 2 to 3. If the total collection is 35 movies, that means the total, like all of these, are 35. Okay, so how many boxes are going to total 35? Well, each of these is a unit, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 times what number is 35? And we didn't get to our expressions and equations unit yet to solve equations, but you can see that this n, which represents how many, or each of these, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, times some n equals 35. So what is in each n? Well, you could see that that n should be 7, because 5 times 7 equals 35. And so therefore, n is equal to 7. So what that means is that there are 7 in each of these units, okay? That's what that means, right? And you can see that total. 7 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 35. Now some of you might have said, well, Miss Miguel, isn't that the same thing as me taking 35 and dividing it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Exactly is. Because that's how you solve a multiplication equation, which we're going to discover. So you're already kind of getting ready for that, because this is getting you ready for algebra. And that's the whole idea, and you'll understand it. So you can see here that it's so easy to answer the questions now about the thriller movies and the comedy movies, because you have your number for each unit, and you can see that there are 14, 7 times 2, 14 thriller, and 7 times 3, 21 comedies. So I could write that sentence down here. So there are 14 thrillers and 21 comedies. Now, how could you check your work? How could you make sure that your answer makes sense and it's correct? Okay, well, the beautiful thing about a model is that you have proof, right? There's not just these numbers everywhere.